Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast Young Blonde Suburban. I'm your host, Kaitlin Files. I'm a young, white, female-identifying lawyer who lives in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, outside of Philly. This podcast runs as a sister show to Young Black Suburban, hosted by Tim Witherspoon Jr. The Young Suburban podcast hosts guests to engage in conversation about their different life journeys and perspectives. My show, Young Blonde, has a special focus on badass babes out there doing the damn thing. So welcome and thank you for tuning in. Let's jump into today's episode. All right, welcome back to another episode of Young Blonde Suburban. We have another Laura here, so we just had a Laura before you. This is Laura Suarez, my bestie. How you doing, girl?
Very nervous, but I'm here.
Oh my God, it's okay. We're gonna be okay today. All right, take a deep breath. Just relax. We're like in a totally chill. It's like Sunday vibes. You're in sweats.
I am a little too casual.
We talk literally every single day. This is no change. You're just true. You have like 4 cameras pointing at you.
Yeah, that's
and a ring light.
Right
you
now.
See how like professional this is? I don't know. What's up? So I wanted you on here because you are a teacher and a very creative teacher, by the way, from what you tell me when we go to boxing class together. But we haven't really had, we had Jessica, my friend Jessica, on here. She's a principal at an all-girls charter school up in New York. But we haven't had a teacher on here to kind of talk about what they've seen through the pandemic, teaching, dealing with the in-school, out-of-school, mask on, mask off, kids not being there for a year and then coming back in, and kind of just what it's been like to be a teacher, like down in the trenches every day doing it. So we're going to ask you about that stuff today. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So you are from Bucks County, right?
I am, yes.
Yeah.
And it was already kind of crazy for me because I've been teaching almost 10 years at this point, but I chose to pursue changing where I was working at, not knowing that this pandemic was about to take over and completely
You changed right before the pandemic?
Absolutely.
Look at you.
I know. Who knew? It was like a whole process of the school that I was at. So I was working for a charter school in the city. And so my commute would be going down into Philadelphia each and every day, kind of in like that Tarsdale, Mayfair. Like I had students from all over the Northeast area. But after a while, I just kind of peaked there. It was a charter school. And although I loved the school that I worked at, I loved the experience that I got there professionally, you do end up peaking in the education field at a charter. Okay. I encourage anyone who's starting out or a college graduate to begin at a charter school, because I think that they have so much they can offer you in terms of your classroom management routines, the support of having a mentoring teacher, of having more of the control of what goes on in your classroom, the things that you're going to teach, how you're going to go about teaching it. But the limitations of the charter are, while they can kind of create their own rules and stuff, they also don't have to follow a system of honoring, your professional developments.
So that's what I'm asking. When you say peak, what do you mean? So
after working there for about 8 years and feeling as if I really established myself as an educator, being, liked by my students, being really professional with them and really helping them grow, I personally couldn't move up in my own platform there. It didn't seem to matter that I obtained a master's degree. It didn't seem to matter the test scores that I would produce out of my children for our state testing exams. There was no real pay scale. And that's why, unfortunately, as you as a person start to grow, because I feel like a lot of the times people in general forget that teachers are people too. Mm-hmm. And that we have to, yes, we love what we do. And yes, we love our students and the kids and whatever, but we also have personal lives.
Right.
And that's why I was saying any new graduate, a charter school is great for you. But then as, I'm in my 30s now. And when I start to think about things of purchasing a home and getting married and having children and stuff like that, when you don't have the job ladder that you can continuously climb, it kind of affected how much longer I could work there for.
Right.
So after getting a master's degree, after getting dual certified in not only, teaching English, but also becoming a reading specialist. So having my degree, having a specialist degree, there was no way to jump salary. They didn't give any type of compensation for going back to school. So I saw no money for me having to continue improving my education, but they don't pay for any of it as a charter school. They didn't give me any type of pay raise because I earned this type of degree, and it just became hard because they like hearing that you have all that stuff and want to put more on your plate, but there's no real movement there with it.
I have so many questions to ask you just based on what you just said. Okay, so the charter school in general is a more support. I mean, we've been hearing a lot about charter schools in the last 10 years or so, really gaining traction. And so for teachers, it's really supportive.
Yes.
But when you're in a public school system, you are going to get kind of that pay if you have the master's, the dual certification. Okay. So for teachers, while the day-to-day classroom setting might be more supportive for a charter, the actual career options are going to be better in the public school system.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's hard because I try to emphasize and talk about different things to my friends that are starting to have kids of where they should go to. And like I said, like charter schools are great because they have a lot of more things that they can fall back on. If you get thrown out of a charter school, you go to the public school.
Right.
So like at a charter school, they can be very, very strict with their discipline, the things that they allow, their bullying practices and stuff like that. Like specifically at the school that I worked at, there was a no tolerance for fighting. If you got into a fight or a physical altercation with another student, you were both kicked out of the school. There was no, okay, we're going to do it. Like, that's it. You were removed.
Yeah.
Especially teaching in the inner city, where if you think of the other options and you made that lottery and got into this charter school, your parents were ticked off. You know, if you couldn't handle
Catholic
it there.
schools have that. Because I went to Catholic school, I don't think there was a no tolerance. I think it was...
Charters are very, they are very no tolerant because they can do that. If you go to a public school, we don't always have, it's depending even what funding is. If there are those programs like the cyber school programs or they call them like, you know, like the twilight, like the after school, when it's like the behavioral wing of like, okay, you're going to go to school from 5 to 8 or 6 to 9 or whatever it is. Like, they can't do the same thing that a charter school can.
That makes sense.
In the classroom was great because the kids were there to learn. They felt very, very safe. I didn't really have to deal with, you know, a lot of bullying. They were very accepting and loving of each other, especially same thing. Like parents would say like, I want my kids to go there because they are different, or I know that they have this disability and they're going to have like the support, and they're not going to have all of these kids that are kind of crazy and, you know, making their child feel uncomfortable. So all of that is phenomenal on what it offers. But then the other side is just the personal aspect of it of, I give my life for all of it, but then they don't match the other things. You want me to continue to improve my craft, but you don't want to pay me for something like that. You want me to deliver this professional development session to all of the staff members because I learned this in my master's program, but there's no compensation for it. You want me to run this club because it's great for the kids, but they don't pay for it.
Right.
So charter schools really can take advantage of their teachers sometimes, which is why they have a bigger turnaround than most of the other school in terms of like employment of people that get hired and quit and leave and so on.
So I think we've seen a lot in the last couple of years of the spotlight turn on teachers during COVID. Which it should have been on for years before, because I don't know if I taught for 1 year. And I will, to this date, say it is the hardest year I've ever had. I went to law school, I took the bar exam. It's the hardest thing I've ever done was teaching for 1 year. And I just feel like I always tell people, if you haven't taught or you haven't worked in the service industry before, you can never yell at a waitress. You can never yell at a teacher. You don't understand what it's like. You don't understand how to feel so underappreciated for a job that is so hard. And you are molding like little humans. What I wanted to really talk about is, and I wonder, you know, when you were at the charter school, what grade were you teaching?
So the school that I was at ran from 9th through 12th. I did a year where I taught 9th grade. Most of my time was with 10th graders. And then I had other classes that was sometimes rotated where I could have a study hall that was combined grade levels, or I would take on this mentorship for like our seniors who were transitioning into like college and stuff. So my main focus was 16-year-olds as 10th graders.
And what about now?
Now I actually have 12-year-olds. So I kind of hinted at earlier when we were saying that I was looking for a career change, and I started applying, did all these interviews in January of 2020. And then by the time everything went through, once I resigned, like they can keep you. There's like a 60-day window that they can keep you. They wanted me to finish out like the marking period and stuff because I was doing a mid-year switch, and it was difficult thing that I ever had to do, like telling my students that I was leaving them, and it was really hard. But I thought when I originally left, I left for a comparable position. I left for a 10th grade high school position.
Oh.
In a public school.
Okay.
That was what I accepted.
You had accepted a job that you were not in.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the switch starts to happen January 2020.
Yeah.
When do you actually leave the charter school?
I left at the end of February and then began my new position in March of 2020.
Did you begin that 10th grade position?
I did. So I started at the high school,
literally
started
right
with the 10th graders. I was in building with these kids 5 days. Monday, I started March 10th.
And then that Friday, I remember.
Or what, I think it was Friday the 3rd. I remember it was Friday the 13th was the last day. So I'm sorry. So maybe it was Monday the 9th, if that's whatever.
We know you're not a math teacher.
No, please don't, know.
But it was that Monday you started.
That Monday I started, and then by Friday they said, take your Chromebook home with you because we're not coming back at all.
And this was the public school?
This is the public school.
Okay.
And so I finished the rest of that school year from my own makeshift classroom out of my apartment with my 10th graders.
And then for 2020 to 2021 year, it was all virtual.
So then what happened was I finished out, that was 2019 to 2020.
Right.
I think it would be. Yeah. And then over the summer was when I found out about my building transfer. So being the last hire, I guess, they do a lot of seniority. They originally wanted to move another male teacher to take on this middle school position, but he just pulled the card of, rightfully so, he's been there longer than me. He didn't want to reinvent it. Like, all right. So I moved on to there. And then, yes, we stayed virtual. So the year of 2020 to 2021 was a lot of chaos because that was we started virtual, then it was just teachers came back into building, then it was our high needs special education population, like those that have emotional support, those that are pretty high on like the spectrum, those that had, significant learning disabilities, they started trickling back in. Then it opened up to the rest of the special education, those that have 504s for depression, anxiety, those that have the other IEPs, which maybe just had like one specific area, like it could have just been like for disability and a math focus instead of like all subject areas, like, intellectual disability. So they started trickling back in. Then it started optional. You could be in person or you could be at home. Then there was people even like, it was just, I don't even know how to explain it because every day I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to have no one in my room with me. Oh, okay, I'm going to have 15 in my room with me. Oh, we have this type of outbreak in building. Now I'm back to 5 kids in the room with me. So it was craziness.
Yeah, I remember. So my sisters are both speech pathologists. One's in a hospital, so she, wasn't there, but the other one's in a school district. And I remember her trying to explain the problems because they need the children in person, especially for the speech lessons. But at the same time, it was there were no vaccines yet or anything. It was crazy. And no one really knew. She was terrible. I think she was pregnant. She had little kids at home. But they couldn't really have masks on because it's the speech class.
Yep.
And it was just like this is what needs to be done, but also we can't do it. So these kids are really suffering. Yeah. But then also the teachers, it's like, are we sacrificing these teachers and sending them just back in without vaccines, without anything? It felt insane. I remember just being like, I can't imagine being a teacher right now through all this. I can't imagine being a student. I can't imagine being a parent. The whole situation was nuts. Did you see, I guess, have you seen with the kids? Because you've been teaching for how long now?
I graduated, not in general. I mean, I graduated in 2012 from college. So, and then I started subbing. So it's
about a decade.
It's about a decade.
All right.
So, yeah.
What have you seen with the kids?
I have seen.
Let's start academically.
Okay.
How's it been going with the virtual?
So this year we are all back in. It was very difficult when it was the hybrid of there was some kids in with me and then some online.
Did you have to make double lesson plans?
I had to be in like 3 places at once because I had to be present and eye contact and engage with those in front of me. But then I had the live streaming of those kids that were at home. And then I also had to have a separate screen where I can monitor what everyone's doing on their Chromebook, because at that point we weren't allowed to distribute materials just because of cross-contamination. I can't pass out books and then recollect them for the next class. I can't pass out a worksheet to you, have you use it, me collect it, me take it home, because this was still like people didn't know what was going on. So it was really hard of me trying to figure out like, how do I do this?
Right.
How do I, and then, like you're going back and forth. If I had this unmuted, I'm getting an echo here and I can't get too close to it. Like it was craziness of like the 6 feet and making sure everyone was spaced out, of trying to give someone instructions on what to do, but I wasn't allowed to be over their shoulder. And so much of teaching is about the personal connection that you have.
Yeah, especially the younger kids. You gotta be on top of them.
Even with like, you have to think, even with the mask wearing, this much of my face is covered. And part of teaching is behavior management. It's conveying your personality and like socialization. And you can't do any of that with them. Like I had to change even just how I control and manage my classroom, because there's no visual cues. You know what I mean? If you can see my mouth and I say, Kate, and I give you a look, they kind of have the idea that they should be If they don't have that and I just say your name, you don't see that I'm not smiling. You don't see that I'm pursed lips. You don't see that I am like, trying to get your attention in a serious way. So you have to almost think of like, okay, how can I work on correcting behaviors, but also not like calling people out a lot and embarrassing them, because it's so much more I have to speak. I can't walk by and tap your desk to refocus you because I wasn't allowed to like go near and touch you. Or like other kids, they prefer just like, like a shoulder tap or something to help. That's just their cue of when they're off task or when they're doing something they're not supposed to. And like a lot of that was taken away from us, of me being able to show the expression on my face, and me being able to get close and just do the 2-finger tap on the desk, or me even, being able to just put a hand on someone's shoulder as I'm talking to know that they, they need to make sure that they're paying attention. So we lost a lot of that. And that was part of your craft that you have to reinvent and figure out like, okay, how am I going to do this instead? It's hard.
Did you see any of the kids? Did you see a change in the performance academically?
Yes. A lot of the kids, even when they were at home, they weren't learning. And unfortunately, teachers constantly bear the weight of it's my fault. What am I not? I must not be designing the most engaging lesson, when I'm like, or as you as a parent, and not to blame anyone because you don't know what goes on at home, but like understanding that your house, there's 3 different kids. Maybe you have an 11th grader, a 5th grader, and a kindergarten all trying to log on at the same time. Maybe you don't have the ability to set up a quiet desk workspace area for them to do. Maybe you're at work and not even home. Right. But so much of it kept coming back on us of like, my son's been logged. I'm like, he hasn't logged on. Right. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I haven't seen your kid. And the other thing too was when they were at home, we couldn't require them to put their cameras on, because that would open up bullying, or you know what I mean, of just thinking you don't know, seeing inside someone's home. Maybe they have a messier home. Maybe, they have kids running around or pets, this, that. So we were not allowed to require the kids to put their cameras on. So there was no way for me to know. No sense of accountability whatsoever. I didn't know what my students looked like. Right. I went an entire school year knowing a student's name was Kevin, had no clue what Kevin looked like. You know what I mean? Other than the 5th grade, because you got to think, this started in, kids were, like I teach 7th grade now. So I'm saying like when they were pulled out, their last normal year was 5th grade for them. So I'd have a 5th grade picture in my online, attendance book. I'm like, is that what they even look like?
7th and 8th grade are very transformative years.
Braces. Acne, like haircuts, like they're coming into their own, and now they have shaved heads. Hard. So it was a year of some kids not knowing what they looked like at all. Kids laying in their bed like this with their laptop just on them and not understanding why they're falling asleep. So it was a lot of things, and I think unfortunately people look who that they can blame in the situation. And I think that teachers get vilified in it. And a lot of the times other people forget too, even that like we're people and we have families and this and that. Right. And like, we also have to take into our own, like, what do you mean you can't come in? Like, well, you don't know that I could have a child that suffers from asthma and this, that, like, so it's hard. It was really, really hard. I noticed the kids.
Were there And I'm not sure because I know you're in a Bucks County school district. Mm-hmm. Not saying that there's not disparities there financially, which I'm sure there are, but it's a little bit different a lot of times from inner city financial disparities. I knew a big conversation was just keep everyone home, just keep them virtual. Taking the learning aside, not everyone has the means, like the internet, just internet speed or computer, because not all school districts can provide computers to go home with the kids. Did you guys experience any of that, or was everyone pretty much, everyone has Wi-Fi, everyone can jump on?
No, we had to provide hotspots as well. So not only did every student get a Chromebook, but they had the option to get like a hotspot too, but there was no training time on anything. It really was that take your stuff home, this is what's happening. And like when there's a product pickup drive-by line, like much how they're doing like testing distributions, it was the same thing. You'd pull up, open a window, or just unlock a door and the computer and stuff was placed back there for you. It really wasn't teaching a lot of these kids how to log on, how to connect to the hotspot, what's the online platform that we're going to be using, how can I contact my teacher if I need help and stuff, because a lot of that we do in person. Yeah. You know, like I start my school year off where I teach them all how to email me and how to do a professional email. And like when it was virtual, it was laggy, it was slow. I'm trying to share my screen. Like I'm even getting cut off because my internet might not be the best because everyone was working from home at that point. So it was hard because there was real, like no preparation able to be for any of it. You kind of had to go in and hope that like you knew what you were doing, that your kid was tech savvy, or that you could afford to take time off and get this set up. But there was like, you couldn't get desks anywhere when everyone was like, think of like the toilet paper shortage, but there was also like educational supply shortages. Yeah. Like you couldn't get a cheap desk to set up anywhere. Everyone was picking up chairs and desks and stools and stuff like that. So it was interesting.
I know you're not on the admin side of stuff, but I just saw something on social media that a 7-Eleven, I forget where it was, had posted, we understand that most people rely on school lunches. Yeah. And anyone who's 18 or younger can come in at lunchtime, grab a slice of pizza, Gatorade, and banana, and it's on us. Were you guys struggling with providing? I'm assuming you guys provide school lunches.
We did, and even now, breakfast and lunch is still free to help with the hardship of everything that's going on. So every kid
in the school district,
kid. Awesome. So it doesn't matter. Like normally, you'd have to apply. Yeah. And, growing up for me, like I got reduced. Come from a single mom, I got reduced lunch, but it was a whole application of moms would have to turn in pay stubs, this, that. Now, since this all happened, since 2020, breakfast and lunch have been free for all students. They can come in, they can go to breakfast, they can get lunch there. Obviously, they can still pack their own foods if they want, but they have the opportunity to do that. And the same thing when it was virtual, there was lunch pickup days. They would brown bag everything, and you had the opportunity to swing by the school from the lunchtime of 12 to 12:30 and pick up meals for. And I think they would even give like 3 per card load if you wanted. Like they were giving out food.
Well, that's good because I know a lot of Philly's schools were struggling with that. So it's nice that, the school districts out here in Buzz were being a little bit better. Yeah. So the kids are back.
Kids are back.
Yes. Mask on still, right?
Everyone is mask on.
How has it been with the kids back in school?
They're wild.
Behaviorally, they've been out of school for 2 years.
Yes, behaviorally, they have been out of school for 2 years, and they don't know what it's like to follow the rules. Like, of saying, oh no, like, and also, like, it's a combination, too, because they're excited to be back. So, of course, you're so used to being able to, like, run up and hug your friend, or you're in middle school. Of course, you're shoving and touching and this, that. Touching. You can't do that. You know what I mean? So
is there like a no touching rule?
Yeah, they have to walk on certain sides of the hallway. I mean, oh my God. Now that we're in 2022, I do think that stuff's a little bit more lenient. But when they first all started coming back, it was very strict like that. I mean, mask on, walking on this side of the hallway. We did away with water fountains and replaced with like the bottle fillings. That way you weren't putting your mouth on it. We had to do different seating charts, had to be updated every single day. Bathroom sign-outs and stuff like that were very specific of who's in there, what are they touching, like all that stuff. But it's hard because the kids just aren't used to it.
And they're kids.
They're kids. They wore pajamas to school for 2 years, and they don't understand why they can't come to school with their no back slippers and their plaid pajama pants anymore. We're like, that's just not what you do. Like, that's not how school is. Like, you can wear sweatpants, but you can't come in your jammies, you know?
I mean, most adults are struggling going back to work right now. So
trust me, I know. I mean, I was guilty of like, I was working from home, it was business from here. That's all you can see on the camera. And then I was in like shorts.
The courtroom is still virtual. So I am very much still jammies on the bottom.
So they've been, it's just, you know, you're just kind of teaching them how to human again and how to behave, you know, like, oh, I don't think that's nice. You probably shouldn't say that.
Does that feel
okay.
like, is that new? I mean, that's got to, because you don't normally normally have to like teach them basic things, but is there just an added emphasis now on like, this is how we behave in public?
This is how we behave. There's even, I mean, I taught high school for 8 years. Mm-hmm. So like I was used to helping kids with studying for their driver's permit, helping them pick out which oh, miss, I have these dresses. Which one do you like? Yeah. Can you be a job reference on this application? Can you look over my college essay? So I'm also learning about, okay, now I'm dealing with 12-year-olds and those are not the same struggles that they have at all. You know, and I have to learn like what they're being influenced by. Like we had to implement a no phone policy this year because that was getting out of control because the kids are just glued to them, glued to technology, glued to the Chromebooks where they know how to hack and play all of the games, glued to having their phones with them. And then they're recording and taking pictures and doing things that were like really not nice to each other at all. And so we're trying to just teach them what it's like to be nice to other people again. Yeah. You know, because you're home with your sibling for 2 years who, of course, you're like, get out of my room, loser. You know, now that you're in school, you can't just say to someone like, give my pencil back, you loser. You can't, I'm like, we don't say that.
We don't talk that way.
We can't say that.
I saw something that was like, it's funny that the generation that's behind us, like the Gen Z and the one after that, whatever they're going to be called next, but they promote all this stuff like be kind, but then what they're actually doing with their phones is horrible bullying to each other. And like this whole new like, I mean, listen, we were influenced growing up. Remember, we were just talking on the podcast before you about how like Britney Spears weighed like 125 pounds and she was fat to us. Like you had to be skinny, But now it's like everything's filtered. Like everything is on the internet. Everything's being recorded. And we were talking, Lauren and I work out together at this boxing gym, but there's my younger cousin goes with us. She's 19. And instead of doing the actual ab exercises, she's like taking pictures.
She lays down, takes the picture, but doesn't do the exercise. Yeah. I was like,
but it's like, what? We didn't have that. We didn't have the pressure of the social media. I didn't get a phone until I was like 17.
I think I was 13 and it was the prepaid one where it was 25 cents to send something.
The Nokia ones.
The Nokia. Yeah. I remember if you accidentally clicked the internet, I was like,
I'm gonna get killed.
Yeah, my mom, like,
it was like $1 to send like a message. So like you didn't do anything on your phone besides like listen to ringtones. Yeah. Like that's what you did.
No, you didn't even let you record. You held your phone up to the TV to play the song, and then you're just like,
and then you played like
can't get to my phone, bye. And then you play again like the music. Yeah, and Snake, that was the other thing.
Because that was the only free game. And you weren't allowed to purchase anything on your phone. Like kids do not understand. You had like Game Boy and then a phone, and then maybe if you're lucky one day, you got like a little iPad pod thing to listen to music to.
I still listen to mine on the airplane. I cannot figure
out. You and my dad are the only people I know that have iPods.
I just feel like if I'm up in the air, how do I get Wi-Fi? I don't, so I just use my iPod that has my music already loaded on it.
I wish you, at the conversation, I was with my dad yesterday, and he was like, I'm missing my little music player. And my sister was like, what music player? What are you talking about? What is that? And I was like, he's talking about an iPod. Yeah. And she was like, what are you too fast at? You have a phone. No. Well, now you and my dad can listen to your iPods together.
Honestly, yeah, it's great. And I have my earphones that have been through the wash. And so the wire's all twisted and messed up.
All right, girl, I won't make fun of you for that because I still have that.
Fits in my ears. I don't have the AirPods or whatever that the kids.
Listen, I have AirPods for when I run. Yeah. But do you know how many people I see AirPods with the connectors now? And I'm like, just wear the headphones. Yeah. I don't understand. I guess the difference is it's not connected to your phone, but whatever. It feels like we're just doing total circles here. Yeah. So just talking about this. So the kids, I now know understand, like have their phones on them all day.
Yes.
Like all day.
Yes. And I've even noticed too, like now that we have had our no phone policy, it's great. because the kids are forced to focus more.
Right.
Because you don't even, I mean, we're all guilty of it too. You don't realize, you think you're checking something and then 20 minutes later, you're still scrolling and watching certain things. And it caused a lot of problems, especially this year with all the different like challenges that were being posted. There was the 1 month that was like stealing school property. There was the next month that was like smacking a teacher.
There was that one that just came out that was like a bomb.
There was the one, the
violent,
make a threat, make a school threat challenge or something like that.
What even, I don't even understand that.
I don't know. And these kids worship and listen and like all of that stuff. And they don't understand, where I'm like, that's not cool. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's just not, like, I don't know. Their role models today, I think, are like misaligned. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just, even like at the start of every school year, you know, you do like get to know you activities. And I always try to do like a soundtrack of my life, because like they can tell me songs that they like, and it can be a theme song to their favorite show. It can be something that's like a video game opening scene. It can be something from their favorite movie. And half the artists I don't even recognize that they tell me, or it's like just these real heavy like rappers. Like I felt like no one at all was listing pop singers or country singers. It was all these like, I couldn't even tell you, like Polo G, lyrics. This baby, that baby, my baby, no. I'm like, who, what?
Yeah.
Like no one was, whereas like for us and stuff, like you had those performers of like Hillary Duff or Britney Spears, and like Eminem was the most like, you know what I mean, controversial person you'd have on like,
I was about to say
your playlist.
I had to like hustle to try to listen to Eminem, because my mom was breaking my CDs left and right.
Oh my god! How many times the Eminem? She's just my best friend. My mom would snap the Eminem show in half.
Snap
like,
Eminem, 50 Cent, like all of my CDs got snapped as soon as my mom found
the kids are like all allowed to listen to stuff like that.
How I don't even know as a parent. I mean, it would be. I guess you would have to constantly check and stay on top of it. But even just a Pandora station or anything on like the radio is playing all the stuff now. Like there's really the kids have access to everything.
They do, and it's so crazy or like frustrating, because all it takes sometimes is you just telling them no. Like, so one of my methods of how I do like classroom management is I do play music when they're working. Because I use it as a tool of like, I put it on a certain volume. I should be able to hear my music. If I can't, that means you're too loud, kind of a thing. Like I will not turn it up. You know, this is where it's at. You need to keep your voices below it. And then that way they know if I ever need to like pause to like instruct, if I turn my music off, they stop, eyes on me right away. I say, oh, you know, blah, 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 had a great question about what we're doing. And let me explain it. Anyone else? All right, cool. Back to work. And then I'll put the music and stuff for them. But I don't let them pick the station. And they don't complain. Like, it's so crazy because they act cool and they won all these rappers and this, that. But I'll play Disney Station, Big Time Rut. Like, I'll play. And they don't sit there. And another good one, instrumental hip hop. Okay. Because there's no lyrics to it, but they're like.
The beat. Yeah.
Like, like, you know what I mean? So
they're doing their work, but actually they're writing down lyrics, Laura.
But sometimes all they need is just someone saying, like, I don't think you should do that. And then they're still like, no, you're right. Like, okay, that's fine. You know, they don't fight with me and say like, oh, well, if you're not going to play, I don't know, like whoever, like, you're not going to play this artist for me. Well, I'm not going to, they're like, okay, well, just whatever you want to put on this. Yeah. Like, that's fine. And I'm like,
I've heard that like kids, like they're going to give you pushback. In the end of the day, they actually crave the structure. They crave the guidance.
They do.
They need you to be like, no. Like they're gonna fight you, but at the end of the day,
that's the days that I'm not there, like if I happen to take a sick day or a person, I'll come back and they're like, where were you? Is everything okay? And I'm like, oh yeah, like, you know, I just had to, like, well, you didn't tell us that you weren't gonna be here. I came in and I didn't know that we weren't gonna do da 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 da. I'm like, oh, like they're still kids and they crave that. And I think that sometimes that gets lost, especially when like they weren't in school, who was giving them all like this structure, these routines. And it's like, oh, sometimes parents, there was the loss there too, because they couldn't establish it. There wasn't like, okay, you got home, we're going to do our homework. Like all of a sudden school was at home. You know what I mean? So the parents almost couldn't build off of the routine that their kid had throughout the day. Like, oh, okay, you have homework from 3:30 to 4, but then we have to be at the field by 5. Like all of a sudden there was no sports that the kids were able to do because you couldn't do the group activities. There was no real way to like assign and do homework because everything was already, you're doing it online and stuff. So it's like, I can't continuously assign you more stuff to do because you're working from home as is. So routines and stuff fell off for a lot of kids. And so they just weren't used to, or like knew how to function. I guess, with all of that.
Yeah, I think it's like a big thing. It's like, I remember growing up, like I had school and then I would go to basketball practice and I would come home and I would eat dinner and then I had homework. And then if I was lucky, I got to watch some TV and then go to bed. But like I was talking to my friend the other day because she was like, I remember like if I were grounded or if I were going to miss like a show, I would have to record that on a VHS. Like there was no option to go to my room and like watch TV. Like we did have like certain set routines. And I feel like kids these days are like so grown because they
stay up all hours of the night.
I've been shocked to hear how late some kids are staying up, like very late, 10:30, 11. I was like, I was in bed.
Oh, I hear my 12-year-old saying I didn't go to bed till 2 a.m. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, I was on YouTube, and I'm like, if my mom knew that I was searching YouTube or whatever, or on whatever, playing on something, like absolutely not.
Also, I don't understand how they're functioning the next day in school. Like, you're not getting enough sleep. Kids need like 8 to 10 hours at least, or something like crazy like
I
that.
actually did when my kids came back after New Year's. We do a lot of like work for a couple weeks with like goal setting and like how to overcome challenges that you might have and stuff. And one of the articles that we do and focus on is like it was called like what sleep is and like why all kids need it and everything. And so we talked about like the different stages of sleep and what happens when you get interrupted at this point and how your body functions. And we talked about how like sleep really is important in like your resolutions and your goal setting and to be able to be like the best version of yourself. To where you're not irritable, so you're not coming to school looking to start something with someone because you had a bad day. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you're not falling asleep when someone's given the direct instruction before they say, okay, you ready to go? And it's like, well, no, I don't know what's going on because I was falling asleep when you were talking. Yeah. You know, so sleep is very important and they're not getting it.
And I feel like, listen, parents are great and everything, but like being around an adult all day instead of in with your like peers, there's got to be this weird kind of, because we socialize different now as adults, we talk different. I mean, we're more abrasive than children are, and like I feel like it's got to be almost now you have like 25 like wannabe adults in your classroom who are learning how to be friends with each other again, whereas it's not like they're there all the time, they spend the majority of the day with them.
They don't have to make, like, it's hard to explain because a lot of my kids, their friends are online friends that they just all log on at the same time and play this video game.
You can like find friends now. Yeah. Through the internet.
There's like, things like Discord, like there's just that's all that they use is like these online platforms. So when you take those things away and it's like, well, no, you're not just going to send videos back and forth on TikTok, or you're not going to sit and do whatever this like the Among Us games and stuff. You're not going to have all your friends in a room playing this, that. Like you actually need to just like go and sit and find something to do with that person.
Well, we've talked about this, and not even just kids, but like at the gym we go to, there have been people who are younger than us who will like try to talk to us on social media, but not in person. Yeah. And we find that weird because we're older than them. But I think their generation like does that. They almost talk to each other through a medium, but when you see each other in person, you don't really talk, which is so bizarre. Yeah. And I'm concerned about what the future looks. Can you imagine?
I know.
Like, people don't know how to talk in their generation.
I know. That was the thing too. Even when we were virtual, it was like the kids wouldn't unmute. Like, so not only did I not know what some of the kids ever looked like because they didn't have to put their cameras on, they didn't ever have to speak. I couldn't force someone to unmute and say, hi, I'm here, because there's a chat box. Yeah. You know what I mean? So if I'm doing attendance, they could just type in the chat box here. Or we used an app called like Go Guardian, which allowed me to watch all of their screens, and I could close tabs if they were playing a game, or I could direct message them on there to say like, hey, well, I see you've been on question number 6 for 4 minutes. So you need, some help with that or whatever. But I didn't know what their voices sounded like. They didn't have to actually raise their hand and ask for help in any type of way. Like they could just shoot a message. Now where they're in classroom, some of them fear any type of speaking out loud and having to like address with a peer or ask a teacher to clarify something or whatever. So it's hard to figure out those things and creating an environment where they feel like safe and willing to like want to share and do that stuff with.
And it's hard because I remember, teachers are instrumental. I have, since becoming an attorney and opening my own firm, I've literally gone back and thanked a lot of teachers who have to this day left indelible marks that like I would not be where I am without teachers. And like my parents are obviously everything to me, but the teachers have formed me and like my interest in everything. I hated English, literally hated the subject in high school. And then I was an English major to law school, and I owe it all to my high school English teacher. And I feel like they're losing that. There's that personal connection with the teacher, not inappropriate, just a personal connection with the teacher, that the teacher is going to mean so much to you. And I feel like it's really hard nowadays to connect with your students. It's just with a mask on.
Yeah.
Like you're right, they can't see you.
Now they can't, so they don't know how to read. Like, even a part of like the way that I teach is I like to be very like poking fun or silly.
You're
and
personable.
This, that.
You are.
But they can't, like, even when I teach English or ELA, it's called in middle school because we do a lot of like grammar and stuff with them. But when I'm reading a story, they can't even see my face. So I'm into it and I'm trying to go through, and then all they just see is the eyes, and they don't understand.
I would love to watch that.
Oh, like we just read recently, like, Ricky Tikki Tavi, and I'm like, as soon as the time is right, we're gonna strike and get the and they just don't know any of the voices that you're doing, because it just doesn't make sense when it's like your face is like this and your projection is off and it sounds all muffled.
Mar, you're out there somewhere on the internet, someone recording you.
Oh, I believe it. Gosh, I know.
How has it been on a personal level, like dealing with all of this? Because like you said, everyone is just like, teachers, they just see what you're doing in the classroom. There's no like,
they don't
you're going
know.
home and dealing with all of it.
Right.
You're at home dealing with all of it.
They forget the other side, like I said, of teachers, that like we are also husbands or wives and daughters and sisters and friends and mothers. And like, I think people forget that, and they think that most of us do live, breathe for our classroom, for our students. Like, I go home every single day and I tell stories about my students as if they're my kids. I'm like, oh, want to know what Sweet Mackenzie did today, or do you know, like, Tara was talking about how she just got, like, like I talk about them as they are, but
they're little people.
Then there's the other side of like, you don't know who's immune compromised in my own home, or you don't know like that I have doctor's appointments, or that in any other profession, you get your PTO. And some people will stack it up and take a full week, 10 days, the rest of the year, this, that. I mean, teachers get it too. Like, yes, we do get the weekends and the 10 weeks in the summer, but it's not like our times that we go until mid-June. We come back in the middle of August for like more training and stuff. And most of us throughout the summer are further, like, we have to keep up. Like, I don't think that other people know that, like, we have to keep up with our credentials. I have to do an X amount of like trainings and stuff.
I don't think people do know that.
We have to, every single year, I renew and do different trainings on suicide watch, trainings on EpiPen. Like, people don't know all the hats that I wear, that like, if your child in my class goes into an allergy because something like that, I have to know how to administer an EpiPen,
right.
So I do trainings for things like that. I do trainings for like CPR. I do the other stuff of like signs for like child abuse, and signs for depression, and signs for suicide watch, and then other things of like maintaining like professional relationships and stuff like that, of like, little things that we have to consider of like, whether you're leaving a door open when you're talking, just like, like the normal training that we have to do. And people forget that side of it. Like, we have to obtain a certain amount of like hours in order to maintain our certification. We have X amount of years that our certification is valid for, that we have to go back to school, because everything changes. I may have graduated in this year, and then the next year they implement something brand new. And so that's what we do a lot of times in the summer. We go to these conferences in different states or whatever. Like, I can speak on my sister, for example. She was just talking about signing up for it. She teaches, she's also a teacher, and she teaches advanced placement courses. And so she was just reached out to by College Board, and they want her to pilot this. She's been piloting this new thing in her class, and now they want her to go to this conference and give different presentations and stuff on it. And so, like, those are the things that we do, where people are like, oh no, this teacher's just laying on the beach and they're doing this. And I'm like, or I'm reading 4 different books to decide which one is now going to fit the new types of students that, like, every year curriculum changes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, of course you want to keep like some classics in your curriculum, but then over the things that have been happening, we added other stuff to curriculum.
I was going to ask you some questions about teaching throughout, not just the pandemic, but the social issues that, I mean, we've talked about George Floyd on here before, and the, I guess, resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, but teaching through that, what was that like? I'm sure did you have kids coming in asking questions? Were there like conversations that had to be had?
I mean, you obviously have to be very professional in how you have those types of conversations, because things can get misunderstood, especially kids can go home and say, oh, how was your day at school? And all they have to say is, oh, Miss such and such was talking about the presidential campaign or something. And they could just say that. And all of a sudden the parent is like, oh, okay. So then your teacher was saying that this is not my president. And this, like, you know what I mean? And
it's just
like
a hot topic.
Did
the school, no, you don't say where you work, but did your school district take a stance on Black Lives Matter? Did they issue a statement or anything like that? Or was it just...
So they did not, as far as I know. I do think that like some teachers and stuff that I'm friends with, they use their platform for certain things. Like, you know how Facebook has different filters and stuff that you can add to like your profile pictures. So like you would see some teachers do that, I think, to kind of show like you could add like the Black Lives Matter stickers, or you could add
the
like
the
rainbow, stuff like that. I think that schools try to stay
just
neutral,
be quiet
like
on it.
That. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So like I know that kids come in and they usually use school as a place where they ask pretty aggressive questions because they trust their teachers almost sometimes more than they trust their parents at times. And I just didn't know, because if that trust has essentially been lost because they don't know their teachers anymore, if that was even a big topic, or if it was actually just like, it was not that big as a conversation with children in school.
I think that they want to know. And for me, teaching English, I actually feel like I have more personal connections with my students than other teachers do. Because anytime I start a unit, I do a lot of like pre-reading assessments where we talk about the themes and stuff that are going to be present in the story. And so it'll spark questions. Like we actually, the one we just are wrapping up right now was Charles by Shirley Jackson. And so it's about like a boy who's really misbehaving, but he creates like this alter ego and blame. Like he says, this is this kid Charles, when really you find out in the end plot twist, Laurie was actually the one he would come home every day and, oh, Charles hit the teacher. Charles bounced this girl's head off a seesaw. Charles lost his blackboard privileges, all this kind of stuff. And then you find out in the end that he was Charles. But so like I'll do pre-reading questions. So we talk about like, you know, like we talk about things about like discipline and like what's appropriate discipline in school, what's appropriate discipline at home. And you'd be surprised. Like I actually really love this because I'm talking to my middle schoolers, and one of the things was like, what's a class clown? Why do certain kids behave like class clowns? What advice would you have for teachers, parents? And like kids give advice of like, you know, talk a little bit more. And I'm like, oh, what do you mean by that? And they're like, well, I feel like my mom never wants to like hear like they talk about these things with me. And so I end up getting these relationships, even like I said, of like discipline. And they're like, yeah, like you should take away their phone. You should take the Xbox out of their room. And it's crazy because they say stuff like this. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like maybe I should email your mom and be like, you know, next time this person, your son or daughter is bad, this is what they think is that, like, you're not a bad mom if you say, I'm cutting the internet off of your phone, or I'm changing the Wi-Fi password for this week or something like that, because they almost want to be held accountable for their actions sometimes. Yeah. And so I do think that some of the conversations I get to have are deeper. Another story we read this year was All Summer in a Day by Ray Bradbury, and it deals with this futuristic world. You know, he's a big science fiction writer. This fake world up on the planet Venus, but the theme of it is like bullying. This one girl who's from Earth is very different from her classmates, and they do rotten things to her in this story. And so I get to have those conversations with them of like, have you ever been a victim of bullying? Or like, how do you feel when someone's saying, would you ever be friends with someone of a different background? Like I ask questions like that, and just, it's a matter of how you like orchestrate the conversation with them that I think keeps it appropriate and gives you like the right results. Like one of the things that I've done is like agree disagree sides in the room when a tape down the line for like, I'm not sure kind of thing. So I'll put a question up there of like, would you be friends with someone who from a different background than you? And then I'll say, get up, run to the side of the room. And if you're not sure, you stand on the tape line in the middle. You know what I mean? So sometimes I don't even have to have the conversation. Like if I'm worried that it could be something like, oh, someone could be offensive, or this could, sometimes just getting your feet moving and seeing what other kids think, it just proves points a little bit. You know what I mean? So I think that I get to have those conversations where I don't see the place of that in a math classroom.
Right. Absolutely.
I don't know if I see a place in a science classroom. maybe social studies, depending what they're covering.
Right.
You know, if they could talk about like history in terms of like
repeating itself.
Yes. But I think from my experience, I think that English teachers are more willing and open to discuss those things. I feel like the social studies teachers that I know really just are into the history of it,
right.
Maybe not necessarily having that conversation of like
the social issues.
Yeah, of like, well, how do we see this now? Or let's try to connect this to something current. Or how would you guys feel? You know, me, I always have them do the personal connections to the stories. Even with that Charles story I was talking about, one of our opening questions was like, tell me about a time that you like lied. Did you get away with it? And they were all willing to talk about it. And so you like learn different personalities about them. And so, it's funny because then I feel like that gives me the connection with my students. And then I tell them like at the end of the year, I usually give out like awards. Like I order certificates and I fill them out and I give them awards based off of what I've learned about them throughout the year. Like I would be like, oh, that's worst handwriting goes to Katie, come up here. And then I'd like they all like laugh about it because they're like, you're right, miss, you're right. Or like, oh, most likely to oversleep goes to Aiden who constantly misses his bus or stuff like that. And so I feel like I get to know my kids better and that's where I try to like keep those connections there.
Well, it helps
that I
them
think
feel
seen
lost. By you too,
right.
And if they feel seen, they're going to trust you more.
Yeah,
and like that's a way into it. Yeah. Is the school district? And I don't know if you're allowed to talk to this. Are you guys discussing? I mean, critical race theory is a huge issue right now. Everyone is talking about it. Has it been an issue yet in your school district about how people are feeling? I feel like one of the local school districts was just voting on it if they were allowed to teach it or not. Have you experienced the impact of the critical race theory?
I have not, because I feel like all of our board meetings and stuff as of right now are kind of directed towards like the shortages and stuff that we're dealing with of not able to get substitute teachers, even transportation, because you have people that are just, again, like everyone gets sick, you know, and especially like we are around a lot of germy things. I can't tell you how many kids I see things. You know.
I mean, come on, children are incubators for germs.
All the time I'm always like, or they just, because sometimes they don't even think, like they want to come in and hug me and I'm like, we are not touching. Why are your arms around me right now? They're like, oh, I just had a good day and I wanted to come give you a hug. And I'm like, that's great. And I really appreciate it. But please stop it.
There's no personal. I mean, my nephew walked over and literally looked at me in the face and sneezed.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you? Get away from me.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. Or literally they'll sneeze in their mask and then they'll like give me their mask. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, well, I sneezed in it. And I'm like,
germs.
Okay. All right. Like, well, this is what we're doing right now, you know?
Because you guys are dealing with basically everyone just getting sick right now.
Everyone's
There's shortages everywhere.
So it's like teachers are out because there are also teachers who have been out, like we said, for mental breaks. That they,
so I was going to ask you, like, listen,
I know
just tough. How
I know a few teachers, like in specifically just my building that I work in, that's actually the reason why they're out.
I can't imagine dealing with a lot of this stuff. I'm reading about it. I'm seeing it. I'm not personally dealing with being a teacher right now. I'm not personally dealing with being a parent right now. But I was dealing with COVID and I had to go through my own stuff. And like you realize later, that was clearly in some COVID depression right there. Yeah. How are you, if you feel comfortable talking about it, like how are you dealing with what you've been through for the past 2 years? I mean, that's for me, working out is a huge, there's a reason why. Let you punch me.
I was say, yes, the reason why I like beating you up 4 times a week now.
We box, just to be clear.
That is something that I do for that. You know what I mean? Where it's an hour that I'm out of the house. And yes, it is like an aggressive style of workout, but it's also not mindless, but someone's telling me what I'm like. You know what I mean? Like,
it requires like focus.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like
present.
I think that's what I'm saying. Like I guess my version of mindless was it's I'm present in the moment. I'm not thinking of a bunch of other stuff. So for me, like working out is extremely important to just like kind of keep my mind right about it. I mean, I seek help and I do therapy sessions. So like, that's also
Same.
just like me being able to just talk about like, here's what I'm experiencing, or I feel like I could have performed better in the classroom. Like, so much of teaching is guilt that we take on. You know what I mean? And I'm like, did I do this right? Did I deliver this the right way? I really want to change this. This flopped in this class, but then it went really well in this other class. And maybe I got to tweak it for next year. And so,
what do you like about therapy, if you don't mind me asking? I have a therapist too.
Yeah.
And I have my own personal reasons for liking having a therapist.
Yeah. I mean, I like because it definitely is like a safe space for me. I feel as if I can go there and unleash, and the person that I'm talking to, he doesn't really judge any of the things that I'm saying. And I go in there sometimes with the craziest things that I'm going off on. So it's a very safe place. Sometimes just talking things out loud, you don't even realize what the issue is until you hear yourself saying it. Yeah. Because of course,
or how much it was weighing.
Right. You can hear yourself, going over it in your mind, but until you're actually telling someone, this is why I feel this way. This is what's going on. I'm not really sure how to handle something like this. Like, I can tell you half of the conversation, like, it's just me working through my own thing, and I'll say it, and I'm like, oh my God, why did I say it? Like, you know what I mean?
What am I paying you for?
Like, yeah.
I see it talk.
But like, literally, I'm like, oh my God. I was like, all right, I gotta go. Like, this is what I know. It reminds me, it's funny because I watch Lucifer, if you've seen Lucifer on Netflix, and part of it is he goes to like a therapist in it, and I always laugh because what he does is he talks about it, and then he thinks he solves it, and he gets up, and then he comes back at the end of the episode, and it's just like, yeah, no, I should just like you. But it's just funny when you can talk about, the things that are bothering you to someone that's not really there to judge you. Is just there to help work through the different things, or find the underlying reason of why you're feeling so upset about something, or why this is triggering you. And yeah, I mean, those are my real reasons for it. I think it's just good.
I find that like sometimes they offer a perspective that I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I like just needed to like rework how I was thinking about that. And it's just very helpful to have someone who's, it is like a safe space. It's like, I feel like, I mean, I have two sisters, I have besties, I have whatnot, but like, it's just sometimes you just need this like third party independent person being like, I need you to tell me if I'm being crazy right now, or what's going on.
Yeah,
or just help me
justified.
Yeah, like, am I right? Or am I just like sitting here thinking and thinking and thinking? And I love therapy. I think it's the greatest thing ever. I wanted to wrap up here, but I want to ask you about why you became a teacher. I think everyone has their own personal reasons. But to be a teacher and to stick with being a teacher, I think it requires a really special thing that you have to have inside of you. Like I said, I did it for a year, and I had, thought about doing it for almost the entire time I grew up. And in college, it was my minor for about a year and a half, until I realized that like, it just wasn't going to be the career for me. And I know it requires something special to stay committed, especially nowadays. What made you want to become a teacher? So I think that like, I always knew that was what I wanted to do. I loved school. I loved learning. School was very fun for me. It was very easy for me. And then I had those teachers that like made a difference for me. And it was like you know what I mean? There's the ones from elementary school, the ones from middle school, the ones from high school. You just have that person who just like shows that they care about you, or makes you think differently, or it encourages you to do something you weren't really like, you don't even know how many kids are like, well, I was thinking, I'm like, you absolutely should go to those basketball tryouts. Right. I'm like, do you want me to come sit down there? And they're like, would you? And I'm like, yeah, I'll go sit on a bleacher and watch a kid run back and forth to do it back, because, that's just what he wanted to do or whatever. He needs the support.
Yeah. And so I think that like, I don't know. I just think of the type of person I am. Like, I always was a very performative person. And so realistically thinking of like other careers, like I wanted to do like a meteorologist. I was like, I could totally stand up there. I wanted to be like joke. I wanted to be like a hotel manager. Same thing of like, well, how was your, like, like interacting with people. So I knew I had to do something that was like with other people.
You could be a lawyer.
And objection. I don't know. Like, I like to be creative. I did go into college as undecided my first year, even though in my head I was like, I know what I'm gonna do. I was like, I don't know why I just knew. Right. Like, there was just something in me that like I knew that was my place. I adore reading. I adore meeting and talking to people and trying to get them to think differently and to open their eyes and send them to a new world and a story that we're reading. send them to the past to see like, oh, this is what this person was going through and that's why they wrote about this. Like, I think words are extremely powerful. So helping students like tap into their own creativity, whether they're writing poetry or whatever, or writing journals, or teaching them how to be an adult and do like, no, like you need to know how to send like a formal email to someone. Like, I just knew, like, I don't know. Like for me, I know I talked earlier about like, you know, peaking at a certain job and not growing like, you know, with money and stuff like that. But I don't do my job for the money, like at all. You know what I mean?
Well, you're
like,
in the wrong job if you're doing
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just not like, that's not what it is. Like, I enjoy going to a place every day where like, I feel like I'm making a difference and it's different and I can be clever and goofy and creative and really make these relationships with like people come alive. And that's just like it for me, I guess. Like, I don't know, like my mom has had a desk job her whole life and I'm just like, you do spreadsheets every single day. Yeah. You know,
you pursued your passion.
Yeah.
And you can see your dedication. I mean, at boxing class.
That's what I'm saying. I tell you about my kids every single day.
You do, but also like the ideas you come up, like I'm watching your mind work as you're preparing lessons and like you're so dedicated to them and like you really care and like you can see that.
Yeah.
That's why you know you're a good teacher, because I'm not saying not all teachers are like that, but you know, some teachers just don't have what you have and you're creative as hell.
Yeah,
I do. Know it. You are so creative.
I design like all my, like there are other teachers who send me links to things and websites and pre-made, and I usually design and make my own stuff. Like, I'm like, I don't want to just send them to a vocabulary.com. Yeah. I'm like, no, we're going to do vocabulary sentences where I put all of your names in it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And have you,
I mean, you can just tell. I mean, I've never been in your classroom, but I'm sure it's lovely.
Feel free to
pop in with like a virtual one day. We're like, I'm just here to see Miss Suarez, guys.
Come and watch the show. It's fun times.
So the way we wrap up every show is ask people what brings them joy. So what brings you joy, Laura?
There's many ways that I could answer that.
You can't say hit me with a right hook. I guess yours. No,
I mean, well, I was going to say.
She's a lefty, by the way.
Yes.
Southpaw.
Indeed. Now, what brings me joy? I mean, I think just like, half the time I want to say like other people bring me joy. Like, I adore my family and I adore my friends and I adore my students. And I think that like, that's where the meaning of life comes from. It's like the experiences and the people that you meet and like the relationships that you're able to build with them. I also really love Reese's. So that's a big part
I know.
of my life as well.
Oh, Laura got her booster. Am I allowed to say that? Sorry, HIPAA. Yes, but Laura got her booster.
You might get a sponsorship with that, actually. So yes.
When I dropped off a little heart-shaped Reese's cup, and I was like, "That's it. Friendship solidified forever."
That's it. I don't know what it is. Literally, chocolate does it for me. Absolutely.
But specifically Reese's cup.
Yes. And with the holidays coming up, it's just, I don't know how they do it. It's just the ratio of chocolate to peanut butter and those do we curse on here?
It's fine.
Those goddamn peanut butter hearts. Like, and then they're going to have the eggs for Easter.
The eggs are coming soon.
I don't know what it does to me.
I'm going to stock up for just every year to have them. Just when you're having a bad day, I'm going to throw that Reese's cup at you.
It's always my thing.
So your family and Reese's cups are
Pinot Noir brings me joy. If I'm being honest,
will you double with the Noir and the cup?
If I'm feeling, oh my gosh! But that would send me. I would be in euphoria. Like, no, I don't even know if I could function if I had both Pinot Noir and Reese's peanut butter cups.
Well, now you know.
Yeah, honestly, it's just the way to my heart now. So, but yeah, honestly, what brings me joy is being around people that I like enjoy spending my time with.
Who have peanut butter cups.
Who happens to also, yes, want to have a wine and chocolate night. So,
do you have a GoFundMe page or anything for your like classroom or anything, or people could donate to?
I've considered doing that. I haven't actually done it, but I do know that there's like Amazon wish lists and stuff that you could do.
Do you have any of that to like promote right now for people?
I mean, I would always, I can put something together and I would like always
put something together and when we drop this, people can look at like the link or something I'll post.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
All right, cool. Because I was going to say, tell people to find you, but we're not going to actually tell people to find you. No one needs to be stalking you. No. But if you post an Amazon wish list or a GoFundMe, we will promote that for your classroom.
That I would love.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, Laura.
Absolutely.
I'll see you in boxing class tomorrow.
We're done. See.